Welcome to the Cabinet meeting this afternoon for Newcastle and Lyme Borough Council's Cabinet. Welcome to Cabinet members joining me in the room and also officers of the Council and also members of the public that join us in the public gallery as well. I'm joined today with my Cabinet colleagues, Craig Scalding, Portfolio Holder for Leisure, Cultural and Heritage, Jill Heatham, Portfolio Holder for Community Safety and Wellbeing, Andy Fear, Portfolio Holder for Strategic Planning, and David Hutchins, Portfolio Holder for Sustainable Environment. On my right is Deputy Leader Stephen Sweeney, Town Centre and Finance Portfolio Holder, and I'm Council Leader Simon Tagg. We'll make a start. First item on our agenda is apologies. I don't have any apologies because everybody's in attendance today. So moving on to the next item, which is item 3, minutes of the last meeting as set out in the agenda. Do we agree those as a correct record? Thank you. That brings us then to our first item of business, which is our Wally's Quarry update. This is our second meeting since the closure notice of Wally's Quarry landfill, which everybody is aware of. Since then, of course, we've heard that the operator has appealed that closure notice. At the moment, we are waiting for a date to be set for that appeal by the planning inspector. I think also we have the backdrop of increasing odours over the Christmas period. And obviously the monitoring equipment showing spikes in odours across the board as well. So that's the backdrop for this. But as ever, I'll hand over to our Chief Executive, who will give us an update on the report detailing Council's actions, also the complaints, the monitoring data, and also the relationship with the EA and other partners. Gordon.
Thank you, Leader. As you note, this report follows on, as ever, from those brought to Cabinet since 2021 and is the second such report brought here since the Environment Agency issued their closure notice for the site. The closure notice sets out the actions required of the operator under the notice, and that was covered in December's report to Cabinet. But I would draw members' attention to the activity updates, which are set out in paragraphs 2.28 to 2.32 of this report. These prescribed works, which are being carried out by the operator with its contractors, are intended to mitigate the emissions from the site. The monitoring of the site and complaints process continues, and the data show that this has been a very difficult period for residents, with some 1,128 complaints in December received so far, and over 300 to date in January of this year. Also, the intensity of complaints is noticeable, with 26 days of odour events in December, so nearly an entire month where we've received, or more than 10 complaints have been received on any given day. The latest hydrogen sulfide levels were published by the Environment Agency within the last week and are set out in paragraph 2.17. And again, members will note the high peaks across all 3 monitoring stations in late December. The report also advises Cabinet that Wally's Quarry Limited has appealed the closure notice. This is a statutory procedure led by the Planning Inspectorate, and details of the appeal grounds are set out in paragraph 2.26. Following legal advice, the Council intends to make a submission to the appeal, and within the appendix that sets out the appeals process, but further seeks principal party status for the appeal, meaning that it would have an enhanced status in the process. By participating in the process, officers are of the view that the Council can bring evidence to support the upholding of the closure notice, meeting the Council's broad aims of enabling prevention of the site reopening and ultimately allowing for the site to be capped and restored. Happy to take any questions, Leader.
Thank you, Gordon. I think this is a move which we really need to take, and we've said right since the closure notice was put out there by the Environment Agency that we were going to back them. We have to make this stick, and I think being an interested party, being around the table at the appeal, using the wealth of evidence that we've gathered over the years, that's also monitoring data, that's complaint data, our professional environmental health staff that have been on this case for many years. I think that can be brought to bear against this appeal and hopefully prove that it can be successful and that this site closes and has to be fully capped and restored, which is ultimately the goal of this council since 2021, when we had our emergency council meeting about that, and repeated many, many times since that we wanted to see this site closed. And at the moment, this is the only show in town, and over the next months, we will be fighting for this to be closed as an intesty party around the table with the Environment Agency. I think that's the right thing to do. Open it up to questions and comments from members. Bring in Steve first.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Yeah, I think the principal party thing that we sit around the table with the Environment Agency and Wally's, and we got the chance to debate and ask them questions up front rather than have to submit questions. You know, we're actually part of the process. I think is a very, very, very wise move indeed. Main question I've got is on 2.21. It says we expect odour outside the site to reduce as additional gas infrastructure and capping required by the closure notice are completed. The closure notice was, I believe, in the end of November, and it is now the 10th of, no, it's not, it's the 9th of January. So in 6 weeks, and in 6 weeks, it appears to have got worse, in my opinion. I think probably the residents' opinion as well. I wonder if the Chief Exec has any opinions on when our residents might start to see a reduction in the smell.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Sweeney. I think the Environment Agency has set a timetable for the operator to complete activities such as capping, and some of the detail of that is set out in the later paragraphs of the report. It would be good to say to residents it will be solved by X date. That's obviously not something that's within our control. We will continue to closely monitor activity as we are doing, and we continue to encourage people to report complaints. Even today, we've seen another group of complaints come through. It is noticeable in the town. So we will continue to work with partners to press for those works to be completed in the shortest possible time frames. Some of it is complex around the gas infrastructure and also the temporary capping of the site. So we will keep members informed as we go through that process.
Andy.
Thanks very much. No, once again, this makes for sad reading, doesn't it? I agree entirely with Councillor Sweeney that I think it's very important that we have occupy a position in this process which is at the front end, that we can maximise the use of the data that our officers work very hard to get and all the other evidence we've got, and also, brutally put, to make sure that the EA, who are the main force in this, are working up to scratch. I mean, we have to be a friend with the EA in this, but that's not to say that we have to be something that is not a critical friend. We want to make sure that they're actually doing their job properly. The aim must surely be, as Simon has said, to have this thing shut. And everything we can do in our power to do that, we should do. I don't know about other colleagues here. I mean, it also strikes me, I was not perhaps surprised, although perhaps I should have been surprised when an appeal was launched against this. But given the appalling state of affairs over the Christmas break, and particularly, I think, unpleasant when it's meant to be a festive season, when people are meant to be able to enjoy themselves, that's clearly not happened for a lot of people. It really does seem, I'm sure, to those people that appealing against this thing not being run properly is really taking the mickey in the most unpleasant way. So I think I want to go with the recommendation. It's the right thing to do, and hopefully we will eventually manage to put this to bed.
Thank you, Andy. I think a lot of people ask the question, where does this leave the council's legal action via the abatement notice? I can assure people that we are not stopping that, we're not scrapping that. We are doing this now as it's being the interested party with the Environment Agency around the table with the appeal, because this is the most pressing thing that we need to address, and this will unlock what people in this borough desire. And as Andy has said over the last few weeks, and as Steve has said, that's become even more focused. They see the site closed, but they see it stinking to high heaven even more. Questions have to be asked on the operator on that. They've been asked to do works by the Environment Agency as part of the closure notice. Those are underway underway or completed. So we should be seeing an improvement. It is the weather time of year when the odours are at their worst as well, but the onus is on the operator to ensure that they do keep the odours to a minimum on the site. On that point, I'd like to ask the Chief Executive a question just to clarify publicly for us. Is obviously the abatement notice was breached in spring of last year, and that's part of the legal action. Can he confirm that the council is continuing to monitor for further breaches, and if those breaches take place, will they be communicated with the operator, and will that form part of legal action in the future? Would that then be made public to people? Because a lot of people are asking over the last couple of months or so whether there has been further breaches in the abatement notice, and where we would stand if there was. Gordon.
Thank you, Leader. So the short answer to the question is we continue to monitor and will note any further breaches, and that would be the subject, as you note, of further legal action should that come to pass. Obviously, we need to make sure that data is calibrated and correct, but our officers are out regularly making assessments and obviously using the data available to us to search for those.
And just to follow that up, I think people and the public, and particularly the campaigners, know that the longer you leave it from when a breach has taken place to take legal action, the less your case is relevant. And I think if there are further breaches that take place, particularly before Christmas, over Christmas, with the amounts of monitoring equipment spikes that we're seeing and the amount of complaints, it'd be interesting to see when our officers have had a chance to evaluate that data. And I will ensure to the public that be made public when we do know that. And that could be possibly even more weight to the case of the appeal whenever that takes place over the next couple of months. I think it's right, and you're quite right, Gordon, to say we keep monitoring this and we keep recording the data for future use in any legal action that we need to take. And I'll just emphasise what a number of members have said before I move to the recommendations, is that we must ask the public to, and I do it myself and others do it, keep reporting this through either the EA or through the council, through the website, because that will allow us to gain even more information to get where we want to be with this site, and that is that closure, full capping off, and restoration, which will lead to an end to this problem that we've experienced over the last few years. So the recommendations before us are slightly different than usual. Not only do we note the report and the update, and I will at this point say thank you again to our officers, right from Gordon down to the staff that go out with the drone monitoring equipment, and our environmental health officers who've been working over Christmas as well during the New Year period to collate this information. Thank them. Also note the request that the council be the principal party in the appeal process as set out in section 2 of the report. And 3, and if participation on the terms set out in Recommend 2 is agreed by the Planning Inspectorate, to endorse the participation of the council in that process. And we also have, of course, that fund put aside for fighting the stink from Wallis Quarry, which can be tapped into for any legal costs associated with putting that case forward as an interested party with the Environment Agency. All agreed? Thank you. That then moves us to our next item, which is item 5, which is the draft Revenue and Capital Budget Strategy 25-26, and Stephen's going to introduce this.
This report presents the refreshed medium-term financial strategy, including the draft proposals being considered to balance the 25-26 revenue budget and the proposed capital programme for 25-26 to 27-28. It also includes the drafts of the capital strategy, treasury management strategy, investment strategy and commercial strategy. Savings and funding strategies have been identified to address a £1.453 million budget gap for 25-26 via a vigorous efficiency board process. They've been agreed with managers as being both feasible and sustainable, and the first drafts of these have been scrutinised by the Finance and Performance Scrutiny Committee. This draft will go following Thursday to be looked at again. A significantly below inflation council tax increase of 1.99% per Band D property is again proposed. This means this amounts to 10 pence per week or less for 95% of households within the borough. The savings identified enabled a continued contribution of £250,000 to the Borough Growth Fund. This will continue to enable investment in the council's priorities, including significant investment in boosting the sustainability of the environment within the borough and supporting development to the town centre. I'm also pleased to confirm again that savings proposed do not include any redundancies. The capital programme for 25-26 to 27-28 is based on new schemes which are vital to ensure continued service delivery and assisting the council to achieve its corporate and service objectives as set out in the council plan. These schemes total 94.6 million, of which 23.7 million relates to 25-26. This includes schemes to regenerate the town centre, including schemes partially funded from major investment into the borough, successfully secured via the Town Deals Fund for both Newcastle and Kidsgrove. Delivering the capital programme for 25-26 will require prudential borrowing to be undertaken. The impact of borrowing is included in the MTFS. The proposal enabled a balanced outturn for 24-25 and a financially robust budget for the council for 25-26, both ensuring the council's continued financial sustainability and protecting services that residents value. Now, putting a couple of things out, this is a budget that's produced by local people for a local area called Newcastle and Lyme. It's not produced, as the government wants us to do, with a massive authority in all of Staffordshire. It is done by local people for Newcastle and Lyme. I do not believe you will get this level of representation for these sort of tasks in any other way than the way we've got now. Also things like the Town Deal Fund, the money coming in, the £55 million, when Newcastle was regarded as an important place for the government to put funds in. I don't believe that'll happen again either. I think this is an excellent budget. I'm happy to support it and promote it. Thank you, Liam.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, endorse the budget. I think it's been a long process throughout the summer and autumn to get to the stage where we have our balanced budget now, and the plans that will eventually come to full council in February. We are going to send this to our scrutiny committee, FAP scrutiny committee, before it comes back to us for a final look before we submit it to council in February. But I think it's a good balanced budget. I always have a different pence increase than you've got, Steve, because there is a different metrics where you could say 4 out of 5 residents properties are only paying 7p a week extra in council tax. So I can top what you said. But I think you're quite right to point out that concentration on regeneration of our town centre and investment in the borough, and also investment in services, frontline services, our green agenda, which David is covering. I'm sure he'll come in a minute and talk about. And that low council tax of 1.99% shows that we are delivering. I think also our wonderful museum and also our J2 Leisure Centre, and also our concentration on the legal case on Wally's Quarry. We're doing all of this for the people of Newcastle because we're from Newcastle and we represent Newcastle. And I think you're quite right, Steve, to raise the issue of local government reorganisation, which has come to the fore since we last had a cabinet meeting. And I do have a urgent item on that later where we can discuss that more. But as for the budget, I think a really good budget, and I'll open it up to comments now from cabinet members and bring in, first of all, David.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. As you mentioned, there was an efficiency board in each of the areas. I'm pleased to say the Sustainable Environment Efficiency Board managed to come up with approximately £850,000, which really went a great way to dealing with the sort of the deficit that was there. We've got 70,000, for example, for trade waste. We're doing more work with direct cremations. We're treating more seriously fixed penalty notices. We've got solar panels now on a lot of the borough council buildings, which is saving electricity costs, and also the extended producer responsibility funding regarding how we handle the plastics. So I'm pleased to say we managed to create those savings, no redundancies, no cuts in services, no cuts at all, except with the grass. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I'm going to bring in Andy now, because during this last year, we've moved forward with a local plan, again, which is an investment in the borough, isn't it? Having that sound local plan. Again, it's trying to be undermined by the new government again before we've even submitted it or put it in, but we've put it in. And obviously that helps us to ensure we have the right development and job opportunities in the borough. Andy.
Yeah, thanks very much. What a heartening contrast when I picked up this pack of stuff for Cabinet today. The very depressing report for Wally's Quarry, and then this budget report, which cheered me up no end. It shows that this administration does what it said it would do. We said that we'd keep the council tax low. That's our proposal. We said we'd defend services. We said we wouldn't lay people off. All of those things have been done. We have turned in the goods at this point. And once again, I think hats off to everyone in the finance team for working so hard to get this done. Everyone in this borough owes that team a lot of thanks in that regard. As the leader has hinted at, we've had a set of completely unwanted proposals that nobody voted for about rearranging local government. And of course, it's one of those lovely sleights of hand, isn't it? It's talk, the word devolution is used, but in fact, this is not devolution. It's not taking power downwards. It's sucking power upwards and away from localities. This council is directly responsible to the public for the budget. And I will be proud to go out there and campaign and say that this council has done the right thing. In a mega super council, we will be a permanent minority. No one will care about Newcastle, wherever this thing is constructed in the end. And we don't know because there's no regard to history in this in any shape or form either. And our services will simply be cut because the voices of Newcastle people won't be heard. Again, if we think about the local plan, our local plan, and again, hats off to our officers who worked really hard to turn this in on time. We've managed to save housing development targets because of that hard work, although again, the government is busily moving the goalposts even as I speak, I suspect, in that regard. But this was a plan for this locality where there was in-depth consultation, more consultation than there's ever been before of local people. The next local plan, and let's put local in inverted commas, will be for a large splodge. What happens in Newcastle won't be in the hands of Newcastle people anymore. It will be in someone else's hands. And this is all, frankly, a disaster which is coming down the tracks and we need to fight. On the other hand, I think we can be very proud of what we've done locally. We have delivered what we said. I'm more than happy to stand up and defend that. And I believe in a world where, in fact, local government should be responsible to the local people and not be distanced from it as is going to come down the tracks. But as I say, I read this. I was really pleased to read it. It's the most heartening thing, I think, in this agenda pack. And I'd just like to say thank you to everyone who's worked so hard to do such a decent deal. No, not decent, such a great deal for Newcastle.
Thank you, Andy. Any other comments? Craig.
Thank you, Leader. One thing I'd like to say, I'm really proud of where we are at the moment. We've come a long way in this borough, and things like, from my portfolio, the museum and Jubilee 2, we've had a great, successful few years. The museum, it's got a healthy diary of events and schedules of gallery programmes. It always has done. We've shown growth now in block bookings of the museum. So instead of just individual bookings of the rooms, people are interested in booking this for a longer period of time, which shows that it's gathering growth and interest throughout the residents of the borough. Interest in schools at the museum, it's growing constantly. We're getting more schools applying for visits to the museum. The shop, and an independent sort of franchise trade there, the shop itself, its trade's growing. So this is where we are at with just the museum site at the current moment in time and where we've got to over the last couple of years. Jubilee 2, membership may have taken a dip during COVID, but now we're back up to 4,000 members. We've got a referral programme. Excuse me. The referral programme now has 410 referrals through medical reasons, people who would normally go to a gym and wouldn't get the health benefits that they're getting from our site in the borough. Many of these, I think 58 now, have now converted to full memberships. So it's helping people's health, mental health. We're in such a good place at the moment. And it's I second what Councillor Fears says. The way that we are moving now with this devolution bill, it's only detrimental to what's going on in our borough. And we've fought hard and fast a long time to get to where we are now. And it's an absolute shame if this bill goes through, what effect it will have to our local residents and the amenities and sites that we've got in a fantastic borough at the moment. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Craig. And we have a chance to discuss that in more detail under the urgent item coming up under item 11. But before us, we've got the recommendations that Steve has outlined for the budget. There are a number on there, particularly also point you to the fact that the strategies attached for the MTFS, capital strategy, treasury management strategy, investment strategy and commercial strategy are attached as well for your perusal. But the recommendations are is that we note and obviously refer that suite of documents to the Finance Assets and Performance Scrutiny Committee at its next meeting, and then it come back to us at Cabinet on the 4th of February. All agreed? Thank you. That brings us to our next item, which is item 6, which is scales of fees and charges, and Steve is going to introduce this one.
Okay, thank you again, Leader. Cabinet is asked annually to consider proposals for the fees and charges to be applied during the following financial year. It's proposed that new fees and charges set out Appendix 1 should take effect from the 1st of April 2025 and remain in force until 31st of March 26. The Council has an approved charging policy which is followed when fees and charges are proposed and agreed. This sets out the criteria that should be taken into consideration when establishing the amount to be charged. The proposals made vary between minimal decreases, increases and freezes in the fees and charges of the year. When the proposals are applied to the appropriate income budgets, they fall broadly in line with the assumptions of the medium-term financial strategy. We're looking basically at a 4% rise. Some are less, some are minus. Some say the same, and some are more, but the average is 4%. The other thing I'd like to point out, of course, is that the tremendously popular pound after 1 o'clock is still going. This council has never, ever used our car parking as a cash cow. You read the Daily Mail, and the Daily Mail will tell you otherwise. Every council milks the driver, but we don't. It has simply been a way of controlling parking and paying for our traffic wardens to control the car parks and stop people parking illegally. But no, I'm happy to support this. Nobody wants a rise, but I think 4% is in line with our MTFS, and I support this entirely. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Any comments from Cabinet members? David.
Yeah. Yeah, on the scale of fees and charges, I'd just like to say the bereavement services at the council. We brought in some new services at Newcastle Crematorium. We brought in the granite wall plaque in the posy vase, the memorial leaf on the memorial tree. If anybody's not been to Bradwell Crematorium to look at the memorial tree, I suggest you go. It's really impressive. We've also brought in some garden and memorial plaques, which is really good. I've gone through the proposed increases in the bereavement services fees and charges with the service director for the commercial delivery, and it has been necessary to review the fees and charges in order to keep them in line with the cost of the service provision. Regarding environmental health, fixed penalty charges for waste receptacles is appropriate. Likewise, fixed penalties for domestic fly tipping and trade fly tipping is appropriate. We're a borough council. We promote zero tolerance for fly tipping. We all want cleaner streets and a cleaner borough. Thank you.
Thank you, David. So recommendation as before us that we accept the fees and charges for this year. All agreed?
Great.
Thank you. That brings us back to the agenda and our next item, which is Navigation House Refurbishment Contractor Award. And Jill's going to introduce this.
Okay, thank you, Leader. Purpose of this report is to provide Cabinet with an update on the procurement of a contractor for the refurbishment of Navigation House as a homeless hub and accommodation, and to seek authority to appoint the selected contractor. A business case and bid were developed to fund a multi-agency assessment centre with accommodation. This received approval from the Shared Prosperity Fund Board, and that recognised that homeless individuals are some of the most disadvantaged in society and the furthest from mainstream services. Navigation House will provide safe, secure emergency accommodation, provide an environment where agencies are available to support individuals without an appointment, which is often a barrier to engagement, to work with them, and to provide access to various other services such as Department of Works and Pensions, probation, housing associations, adult social care. So there's quite a lot going to be going on there, and particularly offering emergency accommodation during severe weather and also a one-stop shop. The benefits to the wider community will be to reduce perceived and actual antisocial behaviour in town associated with rough sleeping, because obviously as these people are working within Navigation House, that will reduce. And supporting businesses who are impacted by this cohort. There's quite a few things there. It'll also remove the current reliance on expensive bed and breakfast for emergency accommodation, which is quite a high cost, and you don't get the actual concentrated working with people that need this kind of support. So the council previously authorised the acquisition of this property in September. It also has a housing assistance policy which sets out how to offer financial help. Now, it does support residents to improve their health and well-being by addressing problems with unsuitable accommodation that don't meet needs. However, we also need to supply accessible supported housing provision for disabled people in housing need. And when the policy was updated in March 23, this provision was not included as it had not previously been used. So adopting the provision would allow disabled facility grant funding to be assigned to the project to support the creation of 2 ground floor wheelchair accessible rooms for disabled residents. Procurement of the contractor was undertaken via the Pagabo framework. Tenders were returned, and obviously there's an attendant confidential report that we'll be looking at later regarding that. So the recommendation is to authorise the Deputy Chief Executive in consultation with the relevant portfolio holder to sign any such agreements as may be necessary to complete the refurbishment of Navigation House for its use as a homeless hub and accommodation, to authorise an amendment to the housing assistance policy to include discretionary applications for creating accessible supported housing provision for disabled people in housing need, and to authorise the allocation of funding as set out in the report. The Shared Prosperity Fund Board approved capital and revenue funding to develop a homeless hub for Newcastle under Lyme. And in line with national strategy, the council aims to end rough sleeping in the borough by 2025 where possible. And where it does occur, it is rare, brief and non-recurrent. And it supports housing individuals who are often furthest from mainstream services. I ask that Cabinet approve the recommendations as written, and it also demonstrates our commitment to having Navigation House as a professional area for multi-agency working to support our homeless individuals within the borough.
Thank you, Jill. I did note in there you said obviously the aspiration to eliminate homelessness by 2025. If I remember in the previous government, that was a commitment by the previous government to do that. Have we had any commitment from the present government to do the same?
Not at all, no.
Interesting for such a caring government. Okay, open it up to any questions or comments on this, Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I think you make an interesting point there. Yeah, the funding, the funding is part that interested me on 8.4, and I think it lists the different pots where the money's coming from. But I spoke to this at the planning committee on the day, and this facility is for people who want to help themselves. A bit like Orchard House when it was on Clayton Road, was set up people who want to help themselves, and the funding's all there. It's all mainly come from the Shared Prosperity Fund, with a few other little bits and bobs of pots that the council's got. And I absolutely support this. I think it's a really, really, really strong initiative, and I hope it succeeds. Thank you.
Any other comments? Not seeing them. They've got the recommendations before us, and from my point of view, this council over many years has had a proud record of dealing with homelessness and getting people off the streets. And I think, as I said, the funding provided by the previous government, which is through the Shared Prosperity Fund, which has enabled this Navigation House project to come forward, I think is brilliant. Let's hope the new government do commit to enable us to continue this. I think one of the downsides is, and I think a lot of people know this, there is a lot of people attracted to our town centre because we provide these services. But I think a decision has been taken, and I think people out in the borough would want us to do that, is to make sure that we do provide facilities for particularly this one, which, as Steve said, is about getting people back on their feet and off the streets permanently, so they don't arrive back on the streets. So this facility is welcome in that regard. So recommendations before us there is that obviously the Deputy Chief Executive, in consultation with Jill, signs any such agreements as necessary to complete the refurbishment of Navigation House for the use as a homeless hub and accommodation, and authorises the amendment of the housing assistance policy to include discretionary applications for creating accessible supported housing provision for disabled people in housing need. And then 3, authorise the allocation of funding as set out in the report. All agreed? Thank you. We now move to our next item, which is item 8, update on decarbonisation of the council's operational buildings and fleet. And this includes the annual report on our climate change aspirations and actions. Over to David.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, this report is to provide Cabinet with an update on the progress in decarbonising the Council's operational buildings and fleet, which forms a major part of the Council's approved updated sustainable environment strategy. For the year 23 to 24, the Council's carbon emissions fell by 35%, from 210 tonnes to 1,308 tonnes, as compared to the same data set for the previous year. From 2009, when the Council first started collecting carbon emissions data, to 2024, carbon emissions have fallen by 68.37%. Positive actions have been developed in each of the service directorates. So, for example, the service environment area, we have transitioned all heavy vehicles to hydro-treated vegetable oil, which has reduced this year's carbon footprint by 661 tonnes. This is the first full year of using HVO, the hydro-treated vegetable oil, for the heavy vehicles. For the Commercial Delivery Sustainable Working Group, we've led the installation of solar panels at Bradwell Crematorium offices, the Kidsgrove Town Hall offices, and the Keele Cemetery. As we saw in Agenda Item 5, this will have a £20,000 per annum saving ongoing in the electricity costs. We also currently have a National Lottery application for infrastructure upgrades at Brampton Museum, which is quite exciting. The Planning Sustainable Environment Working Group have embedded biodiversity net gain into the new local plan and new housing development sites. S106 agreements will ensure biodiversity net gain on appropriate sites or locally within the borough where possible for the benefit and well-being of the local environment. The Sustainable Environment Strategy is a living document that will evolve over time as actions are achieved or new actions are created, with the goal for a sustainable net zero council by 2030. And that definitely is the sensible approach. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, David. Yeah, I think a really great progression on our plans to get to net zero as an authority by 2030. The whole borough is 2050, but this is just about the council's operations and to get to almost 70% now, and that's really accelerated over the last few years. As you say, 35% during the last 12 months. I think that is a really good achievement. And I think also there are savings that come out of this as well. It's not all about the green agenda. It's also helping us with our efficiency savings through energy costs, etc., and better ways of working attached to this as well, and that can be seen as well in the report and in the attached report as well. I think steady as she goes. There is, we're into the 2025 now, countdown to 2030. I think the plans you're bringing forward, particularly those applications for funding to help us to retrofit places like the museum, our wonderful museum there up in the Brampton, is a Victorian building, so requires money spent on it to ensure it reaches the standards we need to reach net zero. And there are obviously issues with J2 as well, or Jubilee 2 as well, as our leisure centre is a big creator of carbon. But I think steady as she goes, a good progression this year, and also a sensible approach, as you said, towards this, not some zealot approach. This is about getting to where we need to do, and also capturing those savings along the way, not only in carbon, but also in resources as well, and financial terms. So opening it up now to any questions and comments on the report from Cabinet members. Steve?
No, just back on what you said, really. I think 68% reduction is a fairly impressive achievement. In fact, it's a very impressive achievement, and well done. Well done to Council for that. And there's a bit further to go yet, but I'm sure we'll get there. And like I think, as the leader says, we're doing a slow and steady approach, sort of incremental approach rather than one big hit. So I think it's working well, and long may it continue. Congratulations. Thank you.
Okay, let's move to recommendations then. Cabinet notes, again, that headline figure, 68.37% reduction in carbon emissions. That's 35% over the past 12 months. Well done to the council officers on achieving that and the work across the board. And then key that this goes to the Health, Wellbeing and Environment Scrutiny Committee at its next meeting for review. And we also note the key activities being undertaken by individual service areas currently that are planned for 24-26 who can enable the next move in the right direction on our reduction in carbon emissions. All agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. That then brings us to our next item, which is item 9, which is the memorial headstone policy. We do have a question and a couple of public speakers who are here today. We have Dr. Spencer and also Lisa and Mary Morn. I think I've got the name right there, haven't I? And first of all, Dave is going to introduce the report. Then I will ask Lisa, Mary and Dr. Spencer to come forward to the public speaking area. But first of all, David will introduce the report.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. The current lawn type memorial size restrictions that we impose is height of 36 inches and the width of 35 inches. The lawn type memorials consist of a plate, a base and a foundation. The foundation is underground, so the height restriction imposed is for the plate and the base inclusive. The last time we had a review was in 2013. I was leaning towards confirming that the current sizes should remain due to visual safety, uniform and non-denominational reasons. Kill Cemetery from the road looks very impressive and as a credit to the bereavement services team at the Borough Council. Safety reasons would mean the smaller headstone is lighter and easier to handle. Uniform reason would mean that we would not be a 60-inch headstone next to a 24-inch headstone. Both would look ridiculous when placed next to one another. This might also cause emotional problems for the family that organised the smaller stone, which was all they could afford due to their budget. I'm making a decision in this area. I've spoken to memorial stonemasons. They have confirmed that the majority of residents purchasing headstones, that's approximately 90%, are happy with our current size restrictions. There are a few headstones in their catalogues that are 2 or 3 inches above this size limit. These headstones need to be cut down by 2 or 3 inches at the bottom, which is a pity and causes some disappointment to the bereaved families. So I've been informed by the local stonemasons that if we increase our size to 40 inches, this would accommodate approximately 99% of requests. So the proposal today, I ask Cabinet to approve my proposed changes in the memorial headstone size up to 40 inches. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, David. I'll ask our 3 public speakers to come forward. I think, Dr. Spencer, if you can include your question within your, if you want to go first, if that's okay. I don't know if you're rearranged amongst you, but you've got 3 minutes each, so that's 9 minutes between you, isn't it? And I'm good at maths. Please, yes, press the light on the button on the front, which will.
Right, are we on? Oh, lovely. Thank you very much. Right, well, thank you very much for allowing us to speak today. I hope everyone got their email with the last journey attached. I know I did send that through to Jeff. But I'd also like to say that this is not just a gypsy and traveller issue. There are many people who would welcome less restrictive rules. Death is a great leveller. We're all pretty much the same in that respect, but I speak to many people and I've taken up support and undertaken memorial appeals on a few cemetery and graveyard issues, and not just for my own community. I would have liked just to have concentrated on planning applications for the living, to be honest, but I found myself going down this road from time to time. I do believe we are a terrible country for prescriptive law. Once we have prescriptive measurements, it's problematic and can cause anguish for families. The shortest thing in life is death, and it is incredibly important that wishes can be adhered to if possible. It aids mental health and allows for the full grieving process. It is a tradition every year and a day for families to have a stone put on, so it's really good we're coming to a decision today, because I'm aware of families waiting for this decision. I know the last time we reviewed this was in 2013, and that it would have been reviewed because at that time there was some unfortunate accidents with gravestones, and obviously health and safety is a valid reason, you know, when we're looking at something like this and when we're looking at structure. And I just wondered if it was the safety aspect which was the reason. But when you look at present guidelines and the fact that there's all these the safety regulations that monumental masons have to go through, and it's very, very tightly followed. And even in your own report at 1.7, it says the increased size would not affect the memorial safety inspection programmes of works, as bereavement services staffs are trained to test memorials up to the height of 5 feet without the involvement of a structural engineer. This would not incur an additional expenditure to the council's bereavement service. So if this is the case, this is my question really, is there a reason not to increase the height to the neighbouring stones in Stoke-on-Trent, which is 5 feet? We're just asking about the rationale behind the proposed smaller increase. And I would just like to say, sometimes we think, you know, I am here for Gypsy and Traveller people, my own community, but we're not in a bubble. We don't live in a bubble. And I don't think we should all live in a bubble. We should look at this as a wider community issue, and those options should be out there for the wider community. I do work in a volunteer capacity to some families who've lost children in the past, and it really it means the world to them to have the stone that they desire. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Spencer. Who wants to go next?
You want to go next?
Okay, pass the mic along. Thank you.
I'm ready to go first.
No, I'm right here. If I can just get up. Sorry, just get up my notes. No one with got it here. So I'd just like to thank everybody for giving us this opportunity to come along and put our points across. But as I speak for myself, my family, all bereaved people, all different nationalities and different cultures. So I've just got a couple of things I'd like to read, and then 1 or 2 things very briefly I'd like to add. Thank you for your time. Larger memorials would allow for more personalised overall headstone designs. Everyone is different. Larger memorials would allow for more personalised and larger inscriptions where children have died. It would allow for more than their traditional of 2 aspects without having to reduce them to fit. This would help grieving. Keele Memorial is a multi-denominational cemetery, but the current height restrictions of headstones does not allow for a larger memorial, which is in tradition with travelling culture. Increasing the height would ensure that every cemetery, the cemetery is an all-inclusive of all local community values. Neighbouring authorities allow larger size memorials fitting standards and constantly being monitored to improve safety wouldn't be an issue, as the council have a safety programme in place. So just very briefly, what I would like to add is that 2 things quickly. Looking after larger memorials in a traveller community is we know no different. So we wouldn't put something there and it doesn't be left. My niece, nephews, grandchildren, it's just, we're told from a very young age, it's tradition, it's what we do, it's in our culture, it's what runs through our veins. And on a personal note, speaking for myself, not being able to put a fitting memorial up for my mum when she passed away 7 years ago, the 18th of February, mentally, physically, emotionally rips the heart out of you. You feel demoralised. You feel you've let your parents down. You've let yourself down. And the only way I could put across is that it's not a travelling thing. It's for everybody. Everybody should have a choice to help. It helps grief. It helps with closure. And also as a family, and personally for me, when I lost my mum, I lost everything. Piece of my heart went with her. I know we've all had grief. Unfortunately, it happens. Being able to put a fitting memorial up would give me back and my family something that was taken away that can never, ever be given, that would give something back. It would mean everything. And I just want to thank you for your time, patience, understanding, and even considering this, everybody's help. And just quickly also, Keele Cemetery, Kay, the groundsmen from day one has respected my mum's culture, as I do everybody, but I can just speak about my mum's culture, what we are about, and Kay has gone above and beyond, and you've got a good team of people there. I'd just like to thank you, everybody, for giving us this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those comments. And then finally.
My name is Mary. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to talk today. I speak on behalf of mostly children. I bought my plot when my mum sadly passed away because I've got a son who is life limited. His life is coming to a short end. So as we've heard today, the one thing of our children when they sadly pass away is putting up that headstone. That headstone completes their life. The children who lives short in this life has the biggest stories to tell. So because my son will not achieve to go to university, to get married, to do anything what other people can do, putting up that headstone would mean everything to us. We can't choose who goes into Keele graveyard, and we can't choose who chooses to look after the headstones. We can speak on our behalf, but there is one thing we can say, that Keele graveyard is known for sticking to the rules. So whatever rules go in place, we've been 7 years, we have worked with them, and I am full sure to say, whatever rules, whatever decision is made today, if this goes ahead, it's down to the people who can afford and mean the headstone that little bit bigger means more to them. And it's down to other people how they care and look after their headstone. So please, please today, when you're looking into this, look what it means to different people. All our cultures have different reasons what different things mean to them. This headstone would mean the world. And it means when I lose my son, that I won't have the worry of thinking he can't have what I want him to have. And that is his nice little headstone, what maybe means nothing to nobody. But I hope that I've got my point across. We thank and we've really appreciated Keele's rules. We've done everything what they've asked us to do. We haven't been disrespectful, but please allow people who want a bigger headstone, and if that's what they want, please take that into mind. And people who respect them and looks after them, allow them to have that opportunity. Don't take away our culture today. And also, what's heartbreaking to me is when I speak to other parents and they tell me that their graveyard allows their child to have that. Please don't allow this to continue in Keele graveyard. Thank you very much to everybody who has listened today.
Thank you to Mary, Lisa and Dr. Spence. I'm going to ask David now to respond. He will also cover the question as well in his response. David.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Thank you for taking the time to come to the Cabinet today to enable us to have an informed discussion. The Council has considered the changes to the memorial headstone size considerably, and I have personally taken time to review this matter. I understand that you wish for Newcastle to increase the size to 5 foot. However, we are individual cemeteries and we are making a decision as to what we think is best for Newcastle sites and Newcastle communities. As noted in the report, all cemeteries providers have different regulations and locally different councils have different heights. Stoke-on-Trent, 60 inches, Stafford Borough Council, 31 inches, Staffordshire Moorlands, 38 inches, Cheshire East Council, 42 inches. Having spoken to the local stonemasons, I understand that our proposed height of 40 inches, which is an increase of 4 inches, will accommodate 99% of customer wishes. The increase will enable more shaped headstones and additional words for the inscriptions. This is particularly sought for families wishing to have multiple memorials on the one headstone. The reason for not increasing to the 5 foot is the belief that this will create significant height differences between the headstones. If a 5 foot or 60-inch headstone is used between our current normal height of 36 inches, then we believe that will be too great, and the majority of people choosing a 36-inch stone will not be happy being overshadowed by the taller grave. As the portfolio holder, I am keen to support families at such a difficult time, and we want to ensure the cemeteries continue to offer solace to all visitors. I believe on balance that the increase from 36 inches to 40 inches meets 99% of residents' preferences. Thank you.
So you happy you covered it? Okay, thank you for that. So obviously, David's done a defence there of obviously the report and the recommendation. Obviously, that there is an increase from 36 to 40, which is an increase. Puts us, on par with a lot of other councils' cemeteries. I know not as big as Stokes, and he's given the reasons for doing that. So I would ask Cabinet members, obviously, to look at the report, see the recommendation that the Cabinet approve the changes in the memorial sizes detailed in the report alongside the terms of conditions. Do we all agree? Agreed. Thank you again for coming in, and that concludes this part of the meeting. So if you could go back to the public area, that would be great. Thank you. That brings us then to item 10, which is the forward plan. We'll quickly go through this. The first couple of pages are relating to the meeting we've got today, where we brought the items which we said we were going to. And then we move on to our February meeting, which has got our return of the capital and budget revenue strategies. Then we have a Wallis Quarry update. And then we also have a Q3 financial report, adoption of a tree management strategy, and also agreement of revised local development scheme following the submission of the local plan. And then in March, we have the Wallis Quarry update. Hopefully, we'll have some news related to an appeal by then, hopefully would be in the right direction for us all. But we wait for that by March, and no other items at the moment, but that will be populated as we get further on in the year. So can we all agree the forward plan? Okay, that brings us to urgent business, and I'm submitting a paper today on devolution and local government reorganisation white paper. We've already touched on it, haven't we, slightly earlier, relating to the government's announcement just before Christmas relating to local government reorganisation and the unitarisation. We've brought to Cabinet before on a number of occasions, and we've taken through Council as well the Leaders Board, which is Staffordshire's local authorities, all of us, districts, boroughs, county and the city, working together on a devolution deal. The previous government were looking for devolution deals and looking for local areas to come forward with proposals based on what they would like in their area to allow the devolution of powers and finances to a more local area. And then the new government came in, obviously, in July and put out a request for expressions of interest. And in September, the Leaders Board, including Newcastle Borough Council, put forward an expression of interest for a devolution deal based on key areas such as skills, employment, transport, as detailed in the report, to Angela Rayner and Jim McMahon. But also said that we didn't want a mayor, and also we wanted to keep the existing boundaries of local government. Then on the just before Christmas, the week before Christmas, announcement was made that obviously this would also involve local government reorganisation, and that council should be of a minimum of 500,000 people. But as of yet, civil servants have not provided any detail about the criteria and exceptions, but requests have been made for councils and areas to submit proposals, and also those that wished to submit proposals to postpone the round of elections in 2025 to do so I believe by the end of this week, or is that tomorrow or something, the 10th, wasn't it? And a number of councils areas have done that. And I would say that those council areas that have done that, a number of those were preparing to move to local government reorganisation as part of a devolution deal anyway. Another tranche of councils, such as Staffordshire, have indicated that they don't want to cancel the elections and want to take more time to look at this. So for me, we've been here many times before in this borough. We've got a long, proud history. We fought off attempts of reorganisation before, interestingly in the 1920s, when it could have meant merger with Stoke, again in the 1990s, which could have meant merger with Stoke. And I think when you look at the figures being put forward by the government of 500,000, inevitably a North Staffordshire authority comes to the fore again, which would be a merger with Stoke and possibly Moorlands, which we all know would be a takeover by the city of Stoke as the larger authority, something that we could not stand by and allow to happen. So this paper I'm bringing today sets out some of the history that gets us to this point. Also, I think the duplicity of this government as well, because you should note under 1.7 there was no reference to forced local government reorganisation in the Labour Party manifesto that was put before voters in the general election, and not just put before all of the voters, it was put before Newcastle voters. And I attended 3 meetings with residents, with voters, and this was never brought up by the now Labour MP as part of his campaign. And I wonder why. A question he needs to be asked as this process moves forward. We have got a bid in for a devolution deal, and I will be pushing that be reaffirmed as a devolution deal. That is devolution to the Staffordshire Leaders Board of all the districts and boroughs within the existing boundaries, so allow us to get on and deliver for our people and actually deliver on the things which we deliver on at the moment, which is Wally's Quarry, which is local planning, which is a good, sound, financially run council. It is pursuing that green agenda, which we do for the people in Newcastle to get to net zero as well. And there are many other examples, the regeneration work we're doing, a museum we've talked about, a local sports centre. I don't think the museum would last a year in a larger unitary authority. It would be closed down. We would protect that for the people of Newcastle, not only as a resource of our history, but also as a focus for the community, for our local area. And as you said, Craig, earlier, the number of schools that visit. I remember when I was at school all them years ago, visiting the museum, where I learnt about my local history and my local borough. We shouldn't lose that, and we must fight for that. So I'm putting a number of recommendations to Cabinet today, which I would also like to submit a paper to the, if Cabinet would also support that as an extra recommendation at the end, is that we do submit a paper to the council at our meeting at the end of January, so we can discuss and also move a series of recommendations, such as we note the contents, the implications of the English devolution white paper. We pledge to stand up for the historic independence of our borough. We continue to work with the Staffordshire Leaders Board to develop and deliver devolution as set out in the board's submission of September 2024. We answered the questions, we gave the commitments the government asked of us in September 2025. They have changed the ground again to meet whatever political means that they need, and we are going to fight that. And we call, obviously, for a petition of residents locally to preserve the borough. And we also call on our Newcastle under Lyme MPs. We have 3 MPs that represent the borough to support the borough's preservation, and that they engage with government ministers to tell them that they need to change course on this and allow the Newcastle borough to continue. And I think we'll find all the local councils that will stand with us on this, particularly Staffordshire Moorlands, who I don't believe, and a campaign has already started there. And the leader of that council has already said that they didn't want to be involved in merger talks. And there are other councils in Staffordshire which will become clearer what their case is on this. That we put the case, or MPs put the case to the government ministers for a preservation of the current local government boundaries within Staffordshire, and that myself and the Chief Executive write to the Deputy Prime Minister and relevant ministers stating the Council's position, and then finally that obviously a report be prepared for full Council to go in my name, setting out the details of the devolution local government reorganisation white paper and how this borough can stand up, this council can stand up for the independence of our borough. So I move those recommendations and open it up to comments. First of all, Andy.
Yes, thanks very much, Simon. This was a real shocker, wasn't it, before Christmas? These are proposals nobody has voted on. There is no mandate for this whatsoever. As the report points out here, it wasn't present in the Labour Party's manifesto. It wasn't debated either at a local or a national level. It's also, of course, an act of stunning intellectual dishonesty, calling this devolution when in fact what it means is sucking power upwards. It's a centralisation proposal, not a devolution proposal. As the District Council Network have pointed out, it means that in fact representation per councillor will about halve in these areas. It also means, of course, that anything that's local won't be local anymore. We'll have a large amorphous blob, no doubt carefully designed to maximise the voting impact of a particular political party, in my opinion, with no regard to history or tradition. As Councillor Skelding has pointed out, we've built up here some cracking local services. These services won't be regarded by a centralised authority as a priority in any shape or form. I've been on the borough long enough to notice that when power has been sucked up from the district to the county in the past, those services have got worse locally. And that's not surprising because there is no local accountability anymore. What a tragedy that it seems only yesterday we were celebrating 850 years of this borough as a vibrant, locally independent group. We are now forced, with something nobody has asked us about, for that history simply to be terminated for, in my opinion, cynical party political advantage. I'm 100% in favour of these proposals. I hope sincerely that people on other parts of the political spectrum are with us as well. I note that Labour councillors have already voiced their anger and disgust at these proposals, and I look to our local Labour Party to join their comrades in expressing those opinions.
Thank you, Andy. Steve.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Like everybody else, I was shocked by this decision. We were sitting at the LGA, and Jim McMahon presented on this. Jim McMahon knows about local authorities. He used to be leader at Oldham, so he knows the way things work. And he presented at the LGA, and I've got to say, it didn't really go down very well. He had to sort of vaguely resort to the end to say, well, it's going to happen. You know, well, he didn't say hard luck, but that was the inference of it. It didn't go down well. There's a few things I cannot understand. It's going to be more democratic getting rid of a layer of democracy and having I don't know 100 councillors or 60 councillors, whatever, in all of Staffordshire. That's going to be more democratic. I can't see it. I just don't follow it. This place has been independent for 850 years, and the inference of this is we're going to be merged with Stoke. Well, we all know how popular that's going to be. And then they talk about mayors. Everything's going to be great. You're going to give the mayor everything. We give local authorities everything instead of the mayor. You don't need a mayor. Well, they had mayors in Stoke. They had 2 mayors, I believe, and I don't think they went down very well in Stoke. And the idea of telling people we're going to have a mayor, I think is just I just can't see any benefits to this at all. Absolutely nothing apart from what Councillor Fear says about the it puts more control in the hands of one party. I can't, and I can understand from their point of view, but from anybody else's, no, I just don't see it. I absolutely cannot see the benefits of this, and I certainly oppose it to every bone in my body. I think it's just I've lost the words really. It's just such a crazy idea they thought up. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. As has been said before, the loyal and ancient borough of Newcastle under Lyme traces its history back to 1173, when records show that Henry II granted the charter to the town and gave strong support to the early borough over the following decade. Further royal charters have been granted: King Henry III, Edward I, Edward II, and so on. The late Queen Elizabeth granted a new borough charter in 1974, following the Local Government Act of 1972. The rich history was recently celebrated in the 850 anniversary celebrations in 2023, and it was quite a shock. This wasn't in the Labour Party manifesto. This was not put towards the general election to the voters, and it's not something that I will be wanting to support.
Thank you, Jill.
Yeah, I mean, I live in the borough. I went to school in the borough, brought my family up in the borough, and I'm very proud to be a resident of the borough. And I think I probably speak for the majority of people that I know and I'm aware of that have already broached the subject with me, that there is great opposition to this, because I can't see any benefit to Newcastle for this to go ahead. And in a lot of ways, it'd be very detrimental, considering what a well-run council we are, how we perform as councillors, and how we manage our caseloads. I can't see that this is going to improve anything, and in fact, it would make the life in Newcastle considerably worse.
Craig.
Thank you, Leader. I've spoken on this on the previous item relating to the museum and Jubilee too, but on this item particularly relating to the white paper, I don't know where to come at it from. Councillor Fear, you've mentioned representation. Currently, we've got 44 councillors to represent the residents. This could drop that down to 10 to 12 councillors. Now, a lot of the good work that we do on this cabinet, the residents themselves, we do a lot in our own individual wards, and this is going to come to such a loss with this loss in representation for our residents. Things that we've had advantages of over the last few years, like the local plan, would this have ever happened with devolution? Would we have ever got to where we are? The growth of the museum, the growth of Jubilee 2, these are things that we hold valuable in our borough, and I think we're just going to lose all sight of these things, let alone the growth that we're seeing. They'll be gone. The museum will be struggling to even exist, and I just struggle to see any benefits that come from this. And all that I can see is it's going to come to a great cost for the borough. Thank you.
On that point of cost, I mean, we hear this nationally, don't we, about this will save money, but then there is no real evidence that that is the case. There's been no resource implications of reorganisation being put forward by the government so far. The cost to reorganisation, no timescales on how this will be achieved, and what happens with the investment that's already taking place in places like Newcastle, because we had the £55 million investment from the previous government on levelling up, which we are delivering. Visible signs out there in the town centre. Every week there becomes more visible signs out there. We've already saved a hatful of money in this borough by better working with other authorities such as the county council, with the police. This building is a testament to that, as a hub for 3 authorities that came under one roof when they all had separate buildings. And we're also working closely with our already on the Staffordshire footprint with the sustainability agenda, learning, best practice sharing, pooling resources already to achieve what we want to do as well. So I think, following my introduction and the comments that have been made from cabinet members, it's the vow is that we're going to fight the government plans to scrap our historic borough, and that we wish to see local services delivered locally for their community at the local lowest point. And this new government's proposals for organisation are ill thought out, are actually underhand. We've not been brought before or put in a manifesto and been sprung upon councils before Christmas. And it would put the 852-year of independence of this borough at risk. And I think, I stand with the people of this borough, as we have done in the past, on our long history dating back to 1173. There's been confirmed many times by royal charters right up to 1974 when the borough was expanded that we need to stand up for that. And a much larger unitary authority, as has been said, with politicians more remote from our community, I doubt that those will deliver for Newcastle or have the passion or the focus to deliver for Newcastle on things such as our heritage, things such as our sports, leisure and health, things such as our town centre, things such as Wally's Quarry, and the focus this council has had on that has led to where we are now. And I think we need to protect that going forward. This council has no debt and a strong track record of delivering services that matter for local people on a day-to-day basis. And we firmly believe that that is the best place to carry on doing that work, delivering that, is in a council, borough council, based in Newcastle, working with partners as we have done on a two-tier status for many, many years. And that should be the basis in which we go to full council on in the last week of October to get council support for this as we move forward, and to petition the borough as well to get the views of local people on this very important issue that is going to dominate us over the next year or two. But I think the main thing we also say is we concentrate on delivering for our local people still. We have massive regeneration we're involved in. We have massive services which we deliver that make a difference to the people of the borough, such as our street scene, waste, planning, and all the other things that we do, and the environmental health as well, and the delivery of a closed Wally's Quarry, which we all want to see for our borough. And lastly, I would ask Cabinet members if they will join me in the next couple of days with going across to our local MP office and delivering him a copy of the Lost Charter, 850 years of the borough, which details, and I read this over Christmas, and it really reinforced my feeling that we must fight this. And I think he needs to read this. And no, he's not local, even though he claims to be. He's from London, and he needs to know what our local people have fought for over the years. And if Labour councillors don't tell him, which I think they should be, Andy, you pointed on that, we certainly will, and we'll go across and deliver a copy to his office in the next couple of days. But the recommendations we've read out, and with that extra one that we prepare a report for full council, our next full council, so the whole council can have the say on this and come together. And also, it'll be important that I can feedback also from the leaders and chief execs meeting tomorrow that is taking place, where we'll get a sense of what the other districts and the county and the city are thinking on this. But for now, our position is clear. We want to fight this, and those series of recommendations will help us to do that. And we'll implement those over the next few weeks as we start our fight to protect our borough and continue that long history which we have. All agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. So that brings us to item 12, which is disclosure of empty information. We do have two confidential parts of reports relating to fees and charges, and also Navigation House, the contractor award, which is commercially sensitive. So I will move to resolve that the public be excluded from the meeting during the consideration of those reports, because there's likely to be a disclosure of exempt information as defined by paragraph part 1A, schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. All agreed?